Hello, and welcome to Season 12 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. Each week we watch the same movie on our own and then hop on a call to discuss it. This season, the theme is blatant pandering. We're going to review 10 movies that were either made in or set in the U.S. states that have downloaded the most episodes of The Horrific over the last few years. This will be a shorter season, so we may work in some listener recommendations and horror news along the way, too. Thanks for listening. So as we continue I'm going to refer to this season as a mini-series, the theme of which is pandering to the states that listen to us the most. We are on to reviewing a movie that was set in the state of Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. It's got it has to deal with witchcraft, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, it's kind of taking the easy way out, but obviously, yeah. Had you seen this one or heard of this one?
So I had heard of it. I did hear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think it was from. I think it was from like a song or something. I couldn't remember specific. Had to look it up. It's technically in my facts. There was an Iron Maiden song for the music video. It used images of this, and it's like that's where I like. It was so weird. I don't know how I knew that. I don't really listen to Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
but it just clicked. That's the only reason why I knew about it. That's it.
But once again, the affinity between heavy music and horror movies. I feel like we need to keep bringing that up.
It goes deep with this one, too. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
what about you? Did you?
Oh, no, I knew nothing about it ahead of time. I went into it with no expectations whatsoever and then I'm just going to go ahead and say it, pleasantly surprised.
Hey, I tried to find one that, yes, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And it did not disappoint. So I will do the intro, and then you can talk about what you learned, yes. And then we will get into the cursed details.
Ooh, I like it.
In 1960, British Lion brought us The City of the Dead, a supernatural British horror film directed by John Moxey. This movie tells the story of a college student named Nan who is interested in the infamous witch trials of the late 1600s and visits the small Massachusetts town of Whitewood to gather information for her term paper. Because, those usually have a travel budget. Anyway, Nan's trip to Whitewood kicks off an investigation that uncovers the town's dark history, which includes, but is not limited to, a failed witch burning, a pact with Lucifer, a curse, and a coven. This movie was made on a budget of around £45,000, and it was not wildly successful at the box office, but it did make a slight profit, according to Wikipedia. It can currently be streamed for free through the absolutely delightful app Tubi.
So good.
Man, it is insane how much I love watching a movie on Tubi, because I know that it has programmed in breaks.
Yeah.
So I do not look at my phone at all when the movie's actually playing.
Yeah, man.
And it's almost like being back in the theater and that like a thing is keeping your attention. And I'm just like, wow, this is a really effective strategy. Maybe like streaming shows should do this. And then I'm like, also it sucks that there's so many different streaming services. Maybe you could just pay one big bill per month and then you could watch all of them. And then they could just put in ads ever so often to support it. Mm-hmm. And then we would just have cable again.
We're just going to go in the circle. I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah. It's just capable off the computer. Yeah. But I digress.
Yeah.
What did you learn about this movie?
You digressed at a very good time because I was about to digress even further. So I'm going to not.
Bullet dodged.
Man, legit. If you guys listen back, you might be able to hear me take a deep breath because I was about to go. So this has Sir Christopher Lee in it. And kind of what I was talking about with the heavy music. Christopher Lee, he was actually in a couple, or at least one that we've done in the past, The Wicker Man. But he just a legend. I recommend everyone just read up on this guy. He's actually produced like hardcore music. He passed away in 2015 at 93. Super gnarly guy. In the military, all that. He's in this film as well. A couple of his lines were used in Rob Zombie song Dragula. But I just think everyone should read up on him. Super, super interesting guy. Another piece where this comes from, like I was saying earlier, was used in the music video Iron Maiden, but also Misfits had like a show in '96 that they used this film for as well. Everyone loves this film, from what I can tell. Just saying. Also, I'd just like to point this out. When at the very beginning of the film, it was March 3rd, 1692. I'm just saying, March 3rd is my brother's birthday. Shout out to my brother. And those are the facts.
I enjoyed this movie, as I already said. Mm-hmm. It probably was predictable because it was kind of shot and executed a lot like a long episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yes.
And I think, I mean that in terms of like the production aspects of the movie, like I said, how it was shot, the film quality, all that stuff. But also in terms of, I feel like it was pretty clever writing. Like the storylines sort of foreshadowed and like called back and interweaved with each other. And there were some really creative scene transitions. And then like the investigation aspect of it kind of kept it moving. And so it just, because, reading about it ahead of time, seeing the opening, it's like, this was not very high budget. This might be a rough one. But I was just kind of delighted with it all the way through. Yeah.
I think for me, it was definitely, yet again, anything that reminds us of Twilight Zone, we're probably going to be fans of. But it was, one specific scene reminded me of Psycho as well, like when she's driving. It's hard. I don't know where like these comfort feelings come from when you watch, movies or, listen to songs or whatever the case is, when you just get that like at home feeling, that comfortable feeling. Yeah. But I had that when I was watching this for the first time, and, it had to Twilight Zone or, one of those, but yeah, it definitely, it was better than expected. Like initially when I started watching this, I was like, ooh, I don't know, like, how's this, how's it going to be?
The point where I had some doubts was when it like jumped back, because the very opening scene is, 1600s witch trials and they're like burning a witch at the stake. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm here for this. This is cool. Yeah. But then it cuts back to, the 1960s and there's like the professor lecturing about the witch trials and one of the guys in class is a real wise ass. Yeah. And then there's like a girl in the class who's really into the lecture and I'm just like, oh no, this might not be good. Mm-hmm. But then with her like going back to the town, like it was all just kind of set up, that got back into more of the horror stuff. So I felt better about it long term.
Yeah. And so little podcast, how we do things. So I technically watched this like 2 weeks ago.
Same. Yeah,
forgot some of my notes and I forgot some of the things I wanted to, so one of the things I wanted to chat about was, I felt like what kind of helped keep me into this was, the screenwriting, the storyline. Yeah. It was definitely like what I thought would be. So this is just horror podcast. I've just watched a whole bunch of old horror films, but it reminds me of what, like a mystery thriller would have, is today. And then when I was doing my facts and was reading about it, the screenplay, the guy who wrote the screenplay ended up going on and becoming like a well-known mystery thriller author. So it's like, that makes like he knows what he's doing here. I think his name was George Baxt, Baxt. And it just kind of made sense because, like, while watching this, I was like, "This is really playing out like a book, mystery thriller book." My wife reads a lot; she tells me about them. I don't read. I'm a nerd, and But yeah, that was, I think that's what kind of helped keep it together. Not saying that the storyline was like the most solid, set in stone storyline, but just with the fact that like I could see the good in it, I could see the influences that came after, from just the story alone, and it was based on a movie that we hadn't really heard a ton about and hadn't ever seen before, and it just kind of tripped me out for a second. I think that's what helped me stay in with this film.
Yeah, I think the story was definitely a really compelling part of it that kind of kept you engaged. It managed kind of the pace and the tone well. Yeah. And so, but I agree that mystery of kind of wanting to know more and to see how it plays out, and the investigation part where the brother is going to find out what happened and everything. And then you keep finding out that like more people are kind of involved with it, like the professor and stuff. And so it kept revealing new information pretty much through the whole movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it got to that point where, okay, we're done explaining things. Now it's just story, or just like trying to keep you scared for the last 30 minutes or something. It kept moving, which I liked.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's like an onion, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Layers.
Yeah. It was not, let's say, a movie that had no weak points. Mm-hmm. One part that I kind of had trouble with was when it cut back to the school. I had a really hard time understanding what the dynamics were supposed to be, because to me, everyone there looked the same age.
Very accurate, yes. 100%.
I was like, I don't know who's a teacher. I don't know who's a student. I don't know who's dating. I don't know anything. Because I guess people in the 60s just dress like the way that I think all old people dress, because people who were that age in the 60s have been old my whole life.
That's a good point.
The other part that I had a little bit of a hard time with was sometimes the sets didn't match the people's reaction to them.
Yes.
So it was really funny because, like, they roll into town for the first time, and the girl gets out and is looking around. She's like, "Oh, what a lovely place! This building must have been so beautiful." And it's just like deserted,
yes,
just like run down, haunted-looking like wooden wall, and you're like, "What is going on?"
You're like, "This is the exact opposite." Of
yes,
what you're saying right now,
right? Yeah, it's like getting out during a rainstorm and being like, "Oh, what a nice day," and like really trying to like sell it, and it's just like visuals aren't helping you out here, but. Yeah, so there were a few parts, like that was the only one where I really felt like the budget kind of got in the way, because there were a few scenes like that where there was like reaction to things in the set that did not match like what they were supposed to be for the story, and it was it was just confusing enough that it kind of took you out of the moment, which I don't think everything in the production elements have to be like super high budget or super high visual quality, but it's just they need to be good enough to not be distracting. And so that was kind of the drawback there. But yeah, again, minor complaints.
Sorry. I was just thinking, like, did they, so, like the girl that was working at the hotel, or at the, whatever it's, brothel or whatever it's called?
Hotel.
What's a brothel?
Not. Brothel is where you go to purchase time with a woman of the night.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. So the one that
you're talking about, Lottie, the one that couldn't talk.
So the one thing, I wasn't sure if I just missed her or what, but I didn't feel like there was like that good of an explanation of like Lottie, the mute housekeeper, and like where that came into effect. But like that was one of the things I was kind of touching on when I was saying earlier, like it like played into how movies are today. Like you kind of feel, bad for her because you could tell she wants to help, and, like kind of stuck, and, at the end she's dead. But you feel, I mean, at least I did. I was like, I feel bad for old Lottie here. Like she was just trying to, help, whatever. Yeah. I didn't know if they like explained anything like how she got there, why she got there, or anything like that. And I wasn't about to rewatch.
Well, counterpoint, if I was running a brothel in the 60s, I'd want somebody who couldn't run their mouth about it too.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't think you really got much backstory on her. I think that she was mostly a plot device to have someone that was like trying to give them more information, because that added to the sense of danger and urgency and everything.
That makes sense.
But she wasn't, like, the development of her character wasn't really a big part of the story.
Yeah. Which is, it makes sense. I mean, but you could tell, like, she's like a chess piece, in the movie, and that's like you have characters like that even to today that in major films. I was just kind of curious. I think for me, like, I haven't been the biggest like fan of like witchcraft, like horror in the past. Not that I hate them, it's just not my. We all know I'm a simple guy. Give a guy a knife, But,
you know that I love The Witch, and you are just going to stand by your position that you don't like it and that you don't like the entire genre. So that's fine. Well, that's fine. That can be a thing that we disagree on for once.
But I hadn't always been the biggest fan, but I was just like I loved it. I thought this was great. Yeah. Not like there's a ton of action. However, it's only an hour and like a little over an hour long. And so it's like, okay, well, what they set out to do was like, we're going to make this mystery horror involving, witchcraft. And they did it. I mean, like, it was mission accomplished. Like, they did exactly what they set out to. And it was 60s, so you had to have a kind of happy ending, in a way. But like, I don't know. Just like, even when, like what you were saying earlier, like when she walks up and she's like, oh, this is a lovely town. Like, just seeing like that image with it, like the mist or like the fog on the ground and all that, it just sets the tone for Halloween, sets the tone for horror movies, sets the tone, and you can't deny that this is a horror film based off of that alone. Like, there was also another scene where she's like going, I think it was Elizabeth, or no, that was the bad one. Nan, I don't know if it's Nan or Patricia, but they're going down into the basement and like they have a flashlight and it was Nan, because that was when she got captured. But like, talk about intense. Like, even though it was black and white,
oh yeah,
like she opens it up, it's all creepy. It definitely kind of looks a little bit like a stage in a way, but I like that because it's older.
Sure.
And so I was just like, this is, I was happy when that was going on. I was like, this is great. This is a fantastic scene. And you start having like people kind of come out from the dark, and it's legit creepy. And for being in the 60s, when you think Twilight Zone or like Psycho, kind of going on, this was just like almost like a hidden gem or something like that.
Yeah, and I really like the way they wrap that scene up. Mm-hmm. So at the end, so they sort of catch her, and then they've got her on the table, and they're about to like drive the knife into her chest. And then instead of seeing that, you see a knife going to a cake back in like the college town with the brother and boyfriend and everybody. Mm-hmm. And so the one thing I talked about in last week's like update episode was the movie Barbarian, and how there was kind of like the hard reset at one point, sort of in the middle, where they'd really like built up the suspense and horror and everything. And then all of a sudden it just kind of does a reset to where now they can start building that up again, rather than like having a really stark change. So it's almost like unsettling, but then you have a chance to kind of take a breath and then like get re-engaged again, as opposed to turning the movie up to 11 and then trying to keep it there for, the remainder of the time. Yeah. And so I thought this was a good example of that as well, where they had that kind of transition scene that was very attention grabbing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have any other scenes you liked?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely probably my favorite. I mean, as far as specific scenes, I would probably have to go with just like the whole ending sequence that
that was on my list too. Yeah.
But I think that may be it. I mean, I also liked every time they had to deal with like that creepy like groundskeeper guy. Or
the ghost guy,
Reverend Russell. It turns out he's a preacher. Played a creep very well, and I'm saying that with the most respectful. For a guy who lived close to a brothel, a religious guy, he's doing pretty good.
Game, respect, game.
Yeah. But anything that he was kind of involved with, I definitely like, because I just felt like he. I don't know. I just thought it was like good acting in a way. And I don't talk about acting, I feel like, but I just liked it in the sense of like creepy, kind of here to help, just one of those situations.
Yeah.
Although, if he just came out and talked about it, I think it would have. Anyway.
Yeah.
What can you do? What about you?
So I had two. One was at the kind of towards the beginning of when she got to the town, where she's outside and you see there's just like that fog that's like knee level everywhere.
Yeah.
And she's walking and then she stops and looks back and there are just people kind of like at random down the street and they're all just stopped like staring at her super creepily. I loved the visuals of that. Like I would get a print of just that scene to like hang somewhere. I think that's so cool. And then another one was like you were saying that whole ending sequence, but especially where they had the burning witches.
Yeah.
Just because I thought that was such a cool special effect for this movie. Like, obviously they were setting people on fire because there wasn't much else they could do at the time. But that's insane to me because they did it a lot and that made it like a really compelling scene. But I was kind of confused by the whole like, have you ever heard any sort of mythology about a shadow of a cross burning a witch?
No.
I hadn't either. So that I don't know if maybe like in British lore or fairy tales, like that's a thing.
Hey.
But I was just kind of, when they started something about like the shadow of the cross, I was just kind of generally confused until you saw what was happening. And it's like, well, okay, I guess that's what you do in this situation. But
yeah. No, that's interesting because I feel like since then we haven't seen, at least with what we've done with the podcast, haven't seen that either. So
right. Yeah.
Let's bring it back, people.
Yeah. So I'm always kind of interested when you have a movie that is kind of one of the more well-tread genres, like, oh yeah, witch horror, like that's a thing, zombie horror, that's a thing. But I always get a little bit interested when they introduce kind of a new element. So you have kind of like the standard things like, yes, I know that Dracula can turn into a bat. I know that he sleeps in a coffin. I know that he sucks blood. But sometimes these like genres take on a little bit of like a life of their own and people try things out and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Like the Fast Zombies and 28 Days Later was, obviously wildly successful. But with this one, it's just kind of curious. Like, I don't feel like the whole Shadow of the Cross burns the witch was a thing that other future witch movies picked up as part of the lore.
Right. Well, the other thing too is like coming out in the 60s, dealing with, the topic that it's dealt with.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they let this movie just still be out there. Like when I was doing research, I saw a bunch of like deleted lines that they had said that was removed
they had to take out for the American version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, like, even letting it happen, like, I mean, considering like what we have nowadays, like this is very gnarly. And if you think about it, like, Suspiria came out, I think, like in the 70s, so not too long after. That was even more gnarly. But
right.
Anyway,
I feel like the U.S. in general really kind of reversed course with what was acceptable in a movie in a short period of time there.
Yeah. So, but all in all, like with this one, super stoked on it. I thought it was great. I was surprised.
And it's on Tubi. You can watch it for free. Like, there's no reason not to if you're a fan of horror films, especially now that we're getting close to Halloween. This is, I think, like you mentioned earlier, just a good one to have on to get in the spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, couldn't say any better. We're going to freaking October. This is our month.
Yeah.
People,
watch
it. Watch this movie at least once before
Halloween. Toss this one in the rotation.
If you don't, I will swing on you. I will come to I will stay at the closest brothel to your house. I will find you and I will swing on you. I was thinking the word hostile for the record.
Oh, okay. That would be more fitting, yeah.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.